everyone, my name's Amy and I'm part of the sales and support team here at Vigilant Software. In today's session, I'm going to walk you through our data flow mapping tool. I will cover an example map and show you how we got all of the aspects of the map and how we eventually mapped out the personal data items. So, what is a data flow map? A data flow map is a diagram of how personal data flows through a given process and is transferred from asset to asset. Our data flow mapping tool sits on our CyberComply portal. So this is an online cybersecurity and compliance platform hosted in the cloud. It hosts a number of integrated tools such as our compliance manager, the data flow mapping tool, our vsRisk tool, and also our DPIA tool. The data flow mapping tool is designed to simplify the process of creating data flow maps. So this will help you as an organisation meet the terms of GDPR. As part of GDPR compliance project, organisations should be creating their data flow maps just to demonstrate that compliance. So how can the data flow mapping tool help your organisation? Well, you can log your personal data items. So on the CyberComply platform, you can generate an inventory of personal data, specifying what the lawful basis is and what types of personal data and the categories of your data subjects. The data flow mapping tool also generates flow reports. So this is a version controlled data flow report, compiles information from your data flow map in an easy to read format to share with stakeholders. The data flow mapping tool is also geared for repeatability. So the data flow maps created on the tool, you can easily review these, edit them, and also you can update them by multiple people within your organisation as your organisation evolves and so does your processes. So a data flow mapping tool or a data flow map is useful for processes where there are a number of steps or parties involved. So you want to ensure that you've identified all the components in that particular process. The data flow mapping tool embeds data protection by design. Our tool is essential for organisations seeking to embed their data protection. You also have the option to access security controls. So, as mentioned before, are other integrated compliance tools that sit on that CyberComply platform, such as Compliance Manager, integrates directly with the data flow mapping tool and allows you to record what security controls have been applied to a process. Before you actually begin creating the data flow map, it's always advisable that you hold meetings with the relevant department heads to discuss what every step of that process is, who carries out each step, and what assets are used to do so at every point of that process. Doing this allows you to identify the interaction points between all parties and any unforeseen or unintended uses for the data. So we'll just have a look at a brief case study now. I'm sure some of you will remember 5th of September 2018. So British Airways revealed that 380,000 customers' payment card records had been hacked over 15 days. So of course a huge impact to such a huge organisation, just highlighting really how essential it is to demonstrate your GDPR compliance and map out your personal data flow. So on the initial licence, the data flow mapping tool or any of the other tools on the CyberComply platform allows for 5 users within your organisation to have access. Of course, you can extend this as well to fit your organisation needs. There's another section here about archiving users, so I will demonstrate this when we go on to the relevant section of the tool. Essentially, if a user of your project leaves the project, they're no longer working on it, or perhaps they've left the organisation, you are able to revoke this role, archiving so that you don't lose any of the data, but then this frees up access for another member of your project team or perhaps a new employee. So using the tool. Now we're going to go into the tool. I'll walk you through everything and we'll do the example process map. So what you can see now is our CyberComply dashboard. As you can see, we have the 4 tools that I've mentioned previously. We've got our vsRisk Cloud, our Compliance Manager, our data flow mapping tool, and then finally our DPIA tool. So before we go into the data flow mapping tool, first of all, I'm going to take you through this section here. So first of all, if we go to user details. So user details, you can access your own account, change the password if necessary. Then if we go down to this accounts, So this is crucial for anyone who is a consultant. Perhaps you're working with a number of different clients who all have access to the data flow mapping tool. You can use your one email address, so your work consultant email address, and this is where you can access the different accounts. So all you need to do is simply select access. It will then ask you to re-enter that password, and then you can go onto that account. So then we have the account summary. The account summary will show you the license dates that you have, so you're always aware of when your license will come up for renewal. If we go onto users and we select the plus icon here, this is where we can invite our 5 users. All you need to do is enter in the email address of your team member and then set the role. So there's 4 roles that you may set. We have Organisation Administrator. So this allows the user to have access to everything within the tool, full editing capabilities, and also you can edit other users' role statuses. Then we have Contributor. So a contributor can have full editing capabilities to anything on the tool, however they aren't able to adjust the role statuses of other users. Then we have Read Only. This is a good role status for perhaps stakeholders and senior management. So they don't actually need editing capabilities on the tool, but they do need to go in to see what how the project is getting on, the reports that you're pulling off, and see the maps in process. You can have an unlimited amount of read-only users. And then, as we mentioned in the previous slide, archiving a user. If someone is to leave your organisation, or perhaps they just aren't part of the project anymore, you can revoke their role. This will free up access for another user and it will archive their information. Then if we go down here to settings. So the settings section is where you can really customize the data flow mapping tool. And at the end of the day, everything that you specify in this customized settings section is going to show on the report. So it's crucial. First of all, we have classifications. So you can see we've got the default, confidential, private, public, restricted. You can also add customized ones as well. So these classifications are what you would assign to the record that holds your personal data items. All you need to do to add a customized classification, simply add another classification, type this in. You can toggle it off if you don't want it to be an option when you go onto the map, or you can delete it. However, it won't let you delete any of the classifications if it's already being used in a map. So we'll delete that. So next we have custom regions. Now the location is one that you will assign to your particular asset. So you will declare where that asset is located. Now we have a list of the countries, as you can see. But if you want to specify this region even more, which again, at the end of the day is going to show on your report, which is the end result, then you can do so. So the example we've got, location, United Kingdom, to really specify where in the United Kingdom that asset is, you can customize it to Cambridgeshire. Then we have the contact details. So in account summary, the contact details that you put for the account owner, so your organisation, if this is the controller, if you as the organisation, the account owner, are acting as the controller, you can toggle this on to use the registered address as the contact details. Now, if this isn't the case and you're not acting as the controller, that's fine. This is where you would enter those controller details. Then we have the data protection officer details and also representative details. So this is where you would add those. And here is where we have our personal data inventory. So we have a default list, much like the classifications, standard personal data items such as name, address, credit card number, email, etc. However, we appreciate that every organisation has specific personal data items that they process. And as mentioned, as specific as you can be, this is what will show up on the report, so it's crucial. Now, you can add as many personal data items as you wish. All of the data items that you see here are customized ones that I've added. Works in the same way. Add personal data item, you can type this in. If you don't want to delete it, but you don't want it to be an option any longer, you can toggle this off, and then of course you can delete it. As before, you can't delete any personal data items that are already being used in a map. Then we have the data subject, so it works in exactly the same way as the personalized data items. And exactly the same for data sources as well. So now we'll go into the actual data flow mapping tool itself. Now, first of all, it takes you into organization processes. However, before we get to organization processes and actually map out our process, we need to go to organization assets. So organization assets is where you would populate your asset register. Now, any of the tools on the CyberComply platform take from the same organization assets. So if you were to have any number of the tools, you would only need to do this asset register once. Two ways you can do so. First of all, you can download our Excel template. Now it will ask you to fill out the reference, the location, the operator, and the asset type. So you'd fill out those 4 fields for as many assets that is relevant to your organization. You save it, you simply drag and drop it here, and then you import the file. Once you've imported, then you will see the entire asset register will populate onto the tool within moments. Another way that you can add is to create new. So you can add individual assets one at a time. It's the same fields as found in the Excel template. So we've got a list of the asset types. If none of these are suitable, then of course you have other. And the asset type correlates to the icon you can see, and the reference is what the asset will be named as moving forward in the CyberComply portal. So one thing we can do is either open a select few assets into this middle panel or all of the assets by selecting this button here. And then we can create a report of just the assets. So a report of just the assets will show any asset you have open in this middle panel. And here, using these additional fields, you can create a report that shows an association of this asset to all the other areas of your cyber compliance. So I will go over these in the organization process side of the tool, but just so you are aware, they're exactly the same and they allow you to pull off this kind of report. So once you have entered your asset register, and of course you can go back to organization assets at any time, it's not a one-off input, you would then go to organization processes where we would start to add the information to then map out our process. So before you create the individual process, first of all, it will require you to create a process group. So you select create new and then create new group. So it asks for the name of the group, the subtitle, and the description. So we can see here the process we're going to map out, or the process group, it's HR processes. This particular process group is all about employee sickness absence, and then we've got a description of what the process group entails and what kind of processes are involved. So once you have created your group, you simply select save, and then your process group is then available straight away from this drop-down menu. So then to create the individual process, you select the group, select, and then it will open the field to add your individual process. Now, as we're going down, we can see the process owner. So in this case, it's our HR manager. Now, we have to select what they're acting as. So whether that's a controller, joint processor, or third party. If we select controller, And in the settings section, we have used the registered address as the controller. There is no need to then further enter those details as it's taken the account address as that controller. Now, if our process owner in this instance isn't the controller, processor, or perhaps third party, then you can see that there's room to add the controller contact details there. And we can see that all the relevant fields are now completed. Everything that this adding a process asks you is all about complying with GDPR and the things that GDPR need to know about your particular process. So the scope of the process. What's the purpose of processing those data items? And what technical and organisational security measures do you have in place? So once we've added the process, you then open the process into the middle panel. You can see as well that it's laid out the same as the organisation assets. So this allows you as the user to navigate with ease throughout different areas of the data flow mapping tool, but also different areas of cyber comply. So to create your data flow map of your process, you simply go onto data flow map. So the first time you go into the data flow map, the user manual appears. Only happens the first time you enter a map. So we won't go through this, but so you're aware, it's always available in this icon here. So it'll only pop up the first time you go onto the map, but it's always there for you to reference. Then moving along, we have view the report and also export it. So I'll go over these at the very end once we've created our map, and it will make a bit more sense. So these 4 tools in the middle, these are probably the most important on this section of the data flow mapping tool, the ones that you'll use the most. So this is actually building your map. Comment tool, now you can leave a comment on anything on the map, whether that's a data input, an asset, a data connection line, or even a data subject. You can add supporting documentation to this as well, so anything that's going to help you as a reference. Then we have the connection tool, so to show the transfer of the items between which 2 assets or the data input and the first asset. Now when we start going round and populating the map with individual data items, you'll see a number appear, and that of course correlates to the number of items entering the process, and also the arrow shows the direction of that transfer. Then we have the move tool. So the move tool allows you to move all of the assets you drop onto the canvas to the area that you want, so you can lay out the map however fits your organisation requirements. It also, once the map is built, allows you to manipulate the configuration. So this is useful for when your organisation does evolve and also your process evolves. Instead of starting from scratch, you may just need to build onto an already existing process. You can move it around to fit that additional data input or additional asset into that process map. Then we have the hand tool. So the hand tool allows you to populate what we call the right hand attribute panel. So I'll demonstrate this in just a few moments when we actually go through the map. But essentially, the right hand attribute panel is everything that will be then shown on the report. So as much information as you can put in there will benefit in the report. So then we have default tools, so the zoom in, zoom out, duplicate, remove, undo and redo. So before we get started, I'm going to delete this. So we start from a completely blank canvas. So then if we go to this panel on the left hand side, you can see that we've got our asset register. So all of the assets down here is everything that we entered in that organisation asset part of the tool. So your entire register will fill here. However, if you get to this stage and there is an asset that you didn't add in organisation assets, but it's crucial for this map, not to worry, you don't have to come out of the map to add it and then go back in. You can simply add a new asset here. All you need to do is select the asset type, so we'll go call center. You can see it simply drops straight onto the map. Then with your hand tool, we've got our attributes panel. Now all of these fields that it's asking you to fill in, you'll notice and recognise from in the organisation assets. So once you build that out, so you can reference it, so it doesn't have to be called call center. And once you build that out, then your asset will be available in the asset register, so in other areas of the tool as well. So we'll just remove that. Next is the data input. So this is the point of the process that the data is entering your process. Now you can have multiple different data inputs in your process, again, whatever fits those requirements. However, you can only have one connection line going from a particular data input. And once you create that first data connection line, then you'll be able to reference the data input. So in the HR process that I'm mapping out today, I'm going to use two data inputs. So I've simply dropped them straight onto the map, and then we'll add the assets. There is the icon here to add a data subject. Now, my particular process that I'm showing you today doesn't actually have a data subject in the map, but you would use this if, for example, in a sales process, the data subject, of course, provides their personal data items when making that purchase. Then later on in the process, a receipt is sent back to the data subject, which is your customer. On this receipt, you'll have perhaps a certain number of personal data items. So that's when you would use a data subject on a map. And also you can see that I have just been prompted to save. So this will prompt you periodically just to save. So you simply save it. However, it is always available to save in this corner. Just if you haven't done it in a while, it will just prompt you. So the next stage would be to add the asset register or the assets in your particular process. So you can scroll through your asset register if needs be, or you can simply type it into the top. So we've got two of our line managers, we've got our HR team, we've got our payroll. Now, if the location that the tool has dropped your asset onto the canvas isn't right and it doesn't show the flow how you would like to flow your map, then you can just use the move tool and move this around like so. Then there we'll have the attendance database. Again, if it's not where you would like it, you can position it. And then we have our employee file cabinet. And then finally, our secure destruction company. And again, you can just move this to the location you would like it on the map. So once we've got the outline of our map, we know the key assets that are involved in this process, and also in this particular process, we've got 2 points of data input. Then it's time to use the connection line to show how these assets are linked and how the data items are being transferred. So to use the connection tool, you simply go to the first data input or asset and you'll see this orange circle. Select your mouse, don't drag, just move it to the asset that the information is being transferred to. You'll see a second orange circle and you hit your mouse. Like so. And as mentioned, the direction of the arrow, of course, shows the direction of the transfer. So always be wary of that, of the order that you are doing your connection line in. If you make a mistake, like I just did, you can simply remove it. So we'll make our connection lines like so. And then we have the outline of our map. So now, once you've got to this stage of your map, it's time to actually add the data items, select what your lawful basis is for processing these data items, and add the retention period of all the assets of those particular data items. So we'll start at the bottom, data input. So you can see here, we've got the data source. Now, the data subject is the default data source, and then employees and organisation A, they're customised ones that I've added that I showed you at the very start in the settings section. So this is where they would come into play. So we're going to choose employees and then reference. So as well, now we've made that first connection line from the data input to the line manager, we can now reference this as our absent employee. And the method. So how did these personal data items actually get into the process? Well, in this instance, it's our phone call. Our absent employee has called into the line manager to say they're unwell, they can no longer go to work. It isn't the case for our process at the moment. However, if in the data input, the data was encrypted, you toggle this on and enter any encryption details. You can also get to the comment section from here as well. So now we'll add the data. So in this first data input, we're going to add the data items as individuals. So we've got our data subjects. Again, in the settings section, this is where you can add customized. So this is our default list. And then at the bottom, that's where any customized options you've added would show. So we'll put our sick employee. Then it's our personal data items. So again, the default list in the first section of this drop-down menu, any customized data subjects, data sources, data items that you add will automatically go to the bottom of the list. So the newest will always be the last, meaning you don't have to spend time scrolling through the entire library. You will know just to go straight to the bottom and you'll find your relevant fields. So we will add for the data items name. So you simply go through this list and you build up those personal data items by selecting the relevant ones. So we've got our reason, predicted period of absence, got our upcoming engagements, and any medical intervention. Then we've got sensitive data items. So if your process does include sensitive data items, in this example, physical health would be one, you would add those there. And then you've got the lawful basis. So why are you actually able to process these personal data items? In this instance, we'll go with contractual necessity, but you can see from this drop-down list the options. And then we have the exception. So if you are processing sensitive data items, what is that exception rule? Why are you able to process those? So in this instance, we'll choose employment law. And simply you would add all the relevant fields, so as many items that are going into your particular process at this time, and you'd save. So then you can see we've got a 6. So we can instantly see from this data input 6 items straight into our line manager. So let's have a look at the second data input. Same data source, employees, reference, it's still our absent employee. The method, only this time it's face-to-face. So our employee is actually having a meeting with our line manager. They're back into work now, so it's the return to work meeting. So for this data input, we're going to add our data as a record. Now, all you need to do is add record. So it'll ask you for the name. So I'm going to put return to work form, the classification. So as well, if you remember in the settings section, those customized classifications, this is where they would come into play. So we'll select restricted. And then the format. So how is this record being saved? We'll select physical text. And any recipients of your record. So for this example, I'm going to pop the line manager, but of course you would put the relevant fields. And then the retention period. So what is the retention for this record? If it is unknown, you can select unknown. So I'm going to put, for this example, Matt, I'm going to put all the retention periods as 7 years just for a default. However, of course, this would be whatever fits your organisation requirements. And there you have it. There's your record. So now it's exactly the same as adding the data items as individuals. You've got your data subjects, so we'll scroll to the bottom, our sick employee. Data items, so we've got our name, number of days absent, the GP certificate, any medical information, and the reason for absence. Again, any sensitive data items, so physical health, and then back to the lawful basis. So I'm going to select contractual necessity again, and then employment law for the exception. So the difference with adding the data items as individuals and as a record is, if the data items are associated to a record, as they move through the process, they cannot be split up. So they will move as a whole on that record throughout the entirety of that process. If you add them as individual data items, then at particular stages of the process, if one data item isn't transferred to the next stage, you can remove that. So then it will no longer show as being transferred in your process. You can, from the same data input, choose to add your record, and then I could go and I could add my data input here. However, as both of these data inputs had different methods, so i.e. phone call and face-to-face, that is why I have selected 2 data inputs to show those separately. So then we have 6 again. So now it's a case of going around with your hand tool from each asset to data connection line to asset to data connection line to fill out that attributes panel, which will be on the end report, of course, our report. So we have our line manager. All of these fields here are ones that you've added when you created the asset itself, so you don't have to worry about that. Of course, you've got comments. If the data is encrypted, you select that. Then we've got our storage. So the known storage period. If it is unknown, select unknown. Other than that, you would select how long those data items are stored on that asset. So like I mentioned, I'm going to do 7 for all of the assets just on this particular process. Of course, this would be whatever fits your organization requirements. So the same with this line manager, storage, will go 7 years. And apply. So then we go to this data connection line. So the method, how is our data items moving from the line manager to the HR team? So in this instance, it's going to be on an email. Now we'll select the data items. However, for this example, upcoming engagements does not need to be processed to the HR team. They don't need to know the upcoming engagements. It's only important for that line manager. So you can just select X and then this will remove it. So it will clearly show that you're not processing that personal data item without a purpose. So then once we select save and apply, you can see now we have 5. However, when we go to the connection line between the line manager and the HR team after the return to work interview, the method again, so email, add data. We can't deselect any of these. As I mentioned before, they're all associated to that return to work record. So that moves as a whole. Save, apply, 6. So then we go to our HR team, storage. So as both the original email and the return to work form are on our HR team, we have to specify the storage period for both. So again, I'll put 7 years, of course. This would be your own requirements. And apply. Send to from our HR team to our payroll, data connection line, add the data. In this case, both the original email and the return to work form are being transferred. So you save. How did they get there? Via email. Apply. So you can see now we've got 11. You can see 11 data items are moving from our HR team to our payroll. And then our HR team to our attendance database. So in this instance, they would have been uploaded and the data. However, the original email with the data items is not necessary to process this any further. The HR team, yes, they need that original email. The payroll subsidiary, yes, they need that original email. The attendance database don't. They only need the return to work form. So you only have to select that and then save and apply. So you can see we've only got the 6 going there. Then we have this data connection line. So again, how did it get here? Well, face-to-face, the paper, return to work form, our HR team puts this in the employee file cabinet. Add the data. Again, the original email doesn't need to be stored in the file cabinet. The return to work form is fine. So you save and apply. Then our employee file cabinet, so how long is this stored for? Again, you would select your own organisation requirements and save and apply. And then finally, how is our return to work form moving from the employee file cabinet to the secure destruction company? In this instance, it will be face-to-face, as the secure destruction company will get that record, and then you simply add the data, save and apply. So there you have it. I've created a very simple map, of course, just for the purpose of this demonstration. However, this canvas can be expanded as far as you need. You can create a much more complex map than this. Just to demonstrate with the Move tool, I mentioned that you can manipulate the configuration of an already built map. So to demonstrate that, you can simply move it around. And anything that you move, none of the data connection lines will break. So here, you could have room to add another data input, perhaps your payroll or your attendance database. So finally, I'll walk you through the report. Now, you can export the report and it will export into a Word document. You'll have full editing capabilities, so you don't have to use the CyberComply logo. You can use your own organization's logo. And then we review the report. So, contact details. At the very, very beginning, we assigned the registered address as the controller. If you hadn't and you'd specified otherwise, then that would show here. Then we've got the process overview. So in organization processes, when you added all those relevant fields, so you built your process group and then the particular process, that's where all this information now comes into play. Then we have a summary of the entire map. So you can see here the lawful basis for processing the exact number of data items. And then, okay, you can see it does entail processing of sensitive data. There are cross-border processing. The payroll subsidiary, that asset is located in France, so that's why it will show cross-border processing. However, there are no transfers to locations outside of the EEA. That is one thing worth noticing. If any of your assets are in a third country, the tool will recognize this. So when you create your connection line to that asset in a third country, the line will be red and there will be a triangle with an exclamation mark, so a warning sign, just to show you that there is a transfer. What safeguards do you have in place? All you need to do is use your hand tool, select the data connection line, and then from the drop-down menu, select what safeguards you have in place, and then this warning will go away, and then you can carry on showing the transfer of data items at that part of the process. So then scrolling down, we have the map. You can see over an overview, clearly how many data items are moving at what particular points of the process. And then we have our personal data inventory. So again, we've got a summary of the data inventory. Then you have all of the data items that are associated to a particular record. So here we've got our return to work form, we've got the classification, the format, retention, and recipients, and every single data item that is associated to that record. And then we have the data items that aren't associated to a record. So the ones that added in that original email, when our absent employee first called in sick, you have the inventory here. So scrolling down, I mentioned my process doesn't have a data subject on the map. If it did, this is where you would see. And then we have the asset register. So the asset register is essentially all of the assets that are included into your map. So all of these fields that you would have entered when you created the asset, that's what you'll see here. If there were any encryption details, again, that's where that would show. And then we have the transfers. So in a table format, this essentially is every single data connection line. So all of the attributes panel that you filled out, this is where that now shows. You can see the method of transfer, the data source, which exact data items are being transferred at that point of the process, the asset they're going from, the asset they're going to. Any encryption details that you've entered will show here as well. And if there is a third country transfer, so how I just mentioned with the warning, the appropriate safeguards you've put in place, if any, will show here. And then with that comments, it will show if you do have any comments on that data connection line. And of course, this would be as big as your map is. So you can really see the importance of the attributes panel. Everything essentially that we entered in the attributes panel is now shown in this report. And this report is the end result. This is demonstrating your compliance as an organisation with GDPR. So one final thing I will show you, I'll save this. I will show you the additional context tabs on the organisation assets, organisation processes, and any other parts of cyber comply to just demonstrate the variation of reports that you can pull off. So of course, this report is showing you the transfer of your data items. It's showing you how you, or the lawful basis for processing those data items, etc. If you want to pull off a report of your processes to show association and the relationship to other areas of your cyber compliance, much like I mentioned in the organisation assets, then you would use these. So just to run through, you've got any related risks. So this would pull through from the vsRisk cloud. If you did want to show any association, you would do so here. The record, so of course this is the record that we created in this map. As with the assets, these are the assets that are in this map. We have an audit trail here. It's not shown on any report. It is useful as there can be 5 or more users depending on your portal. So it's just good to have a reference to see who's going on what, who's changing X, Y, Z to the process, just to keep a record and to have that reference. Then we have related processes. So of course, any processes under the same group, you can see the association because you can see they're under the same group. However, there may be processes within your organisation that you would like to have some form of documented association shown. You can relate those processes here. It will pull through from any of the processes that you have on your tool. You can assign tasks to you or any of the users, like so. Set a deadline date, any implementation detail or the task detail, and assign a link. And then finally, you can associate any related legal requirements and any related controls. And all of this will show up on a report of any of the processes you have open in this window. So that brings us to the end of today's session. I hope you have all found it very informative, and hopefully now you have a clearer idea of how to go out and map your data. If you do have any further questions, then please pop a comment down below. We will get back and answer them to you. Like I said, we hold regular Q&A sessions, so we're always happy to answer any of the questions you may have. But thank you all very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.